knowing that they're coming back for the next 30 years empowers us to make decisions based on the 30-year performance window. One of the things I think is wrong, horribly wrong in business, is we make, and I've been in business in a different way, we make decisions based on the monthly report or the quarterly report or the annual report. And we don't even think about those things. When we're considering an investment or a change or a modification, we think of it in terms of generational. What's that going to do to us? Not what's that going to do to our bottom line for June of 2024. What's it going to do to the operation generationally?
That was Will Harris, and you're listening to The Regenerative Journey.
G'day, I'm your host Charlie Arnott, an 8th generational Australian regenerative farmer. And in this podcast series, I'll be diving deep and exploring my guests' unique perspectives on the world so you can apply their experience and knowledge to cultivate your own transition to a more regenerative way of life.
Welcome to The Regenerative Journey with your host, Charlie Arnott.
G'day, welcome to The Regenerative Journey and welcome to my office. Check it out. You also I might be welcoming you to a bit of background noise of two Grahams on the whippersnipper in the garden. So hopefully that won't interfere with things too much. Lovely for the garden, but not so good for you guys. This episode of The Regenerative Journey is with Will Harris, as is most of the interviews in this series. We recorded it in the United States in July last year. Can you hear those lovely birds singing there? It's just so beautiful on this spring day in October. We interviewed a number of people in the United States in July last year. Will was about halfway through. We drove from, we were in LA for a few days. We flew into Memphis. We had a few days there. Lila had a birthday at Gracelands. It was awesome for the few days we were there. Then we drove down to Will's at White Oak Pastures there in South Georgia, and we stayed there for 2 or 3 nights in one of their cottages in the town of Bluffton. And I have to say, it was one of the highlights of our trip. We very grateful to have met Will, gave me a couple of hours of his time for the interview in his office. And I might have mentioned this in the interview. His office used to be the courthouse in Bluffton. So many years ago, Will decided to, as he and his family decided to essentially revitalise the whole town because it was really struggling. He's done that in a number of ways. He does reveal a bit of that in the interview. But where his office is now used to be the courthouse. And the crazy thing is, over the road, there's this big old tree. I don't know what sort of tree it is. It's a massive tree. It used to be the tree they used to hang people out of, essentially, if they'd been found guilty of whatever in the courthouse over the road. That was quite haunting. However, it didn't take away from the quality of the interview and the wonderful, wonderful surrounds and the people of Bluffton. We had such a lovely couple of days there. They've got amazing cafe, shop there. We pretty much had 3 meals a day there, as does Will. He's quite the feature. It was such a lovely thing to sit down with Will in his courtroom, in his office. I gave him a bandana and a packet of Tim Tams. He took me through some parts of his life. It was a real honour, and we had such a good time. He took us for quite a few farm tours, and I remember the morning we went to say goodbye, and he used to say I had the worst Southern American accent he'd ever heard. Anyway, which he's probably right. And he said he might hopefully excuses me for taking him off, but he said when he said, "Oh, I've got to go now this morning, Will," he said, "I'm not ready for you to leave." It was really sweet. And he's the only man I know who actually puts the B at the end of the word lamb. I think he might even say in the interview, "We got beef, we got pork, we got chicken, and we got lamb. Anyway, really miss Will. He's such a lovely guy. Great insight, great pioneer, great figurehead for the regenerative farming industry, direct-to-consumer industry. I hope you really enjoy this interview. I loved sitting with him for the couple of hours we had, and it was actually when we finished the interview that we heard that Trump had been assassination attempt had been made on his life. Get stuck into the interview. It's coming up right now. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, do all those wonderful things. Make sure you do that on your favourite podcast app so that you know when each of these episodes comes out. If you haven't given us a review or a rating yet, really appreciate it if you were to do that. Preferably a 5-star one would be awesome. And there's show notes, of course, as part of this interview, and lots of all the other good stuff. I did do a Q&A with Will, I'm pretty sure. We're just trying to work out how we're going to roll those out. Stay tuned for that and many more Q&As from all our other interviews, from not just this interview, but from ones from previous series. We've got heaps of them lined up. Enjoy this one. Will Harris, he's an absolute legend. I hope you enjoy this interview with Will Harris as much as I did interviewing him. Welcome to the Regenerative Journey.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
And welcome to Bluffton Courthouse.
Bluffton, Georgia Courthouse. Yeah.
Which is your office. I'm just going to I'm going to risk ruining how's that?
Judge's bench in the middle up there.
That's your...
And then the bar, plaintiff, defendant.
Yeah. And the interesting thing here is that you, and I mentioned, I just did a little video, now it's out of focus there, bugger it, was, got to get that focus back, that's it, we'll go back, it'll work it out, is the very closed loop of law that was here, because this is the courthouse, the jail cells are out the back.
Yep.
And the gallows...
The trees out the front.
The living gallows is out the front.
It is.
That's lost its focus here. That's a bit of shit, isn't it? How do we get you back in focus here, Will? That's it. I'll work on that. If I get distracted, don't you get distracted if I'm trying to work that focus out.
But we very seldom hang people anymore.
And, well, I'm glad.
Well,
I was a bit worried today I might have copped something. I'm just going to turn my phone off. Will, thank you so much for... dinner last night. Oh yeah, let's turn that thing off.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The machine up there. That's better.
Yeah.
That's going to make a huge difference. If it gets hot, we can have a break, turn that on, do the fan action. We've just spent a few hours with you in your Jeep, with me cradling your rifle in my groin, basically,
That's right.
which had me worried. But we just spent a wonderful couple of hours. You took us around pretty much all of White Oak Pastures. So thank you for that. I'm so grateful you've spent the time with our family to do that. This is all about you, not what we did. Will, can you start by telling us what it is about being here? What is it about being a fourth generational farmer that has his daughters working with him?
Well,
let's start there. Oh, now we've both got the croaks.
Yeah.
We've got water, we've got lozenges, so if we sort of have to stop and start and cough a bit.
This lozenges kicking my ass.
Is that not
no.
Good? Spit it out if it's no good. Hope it's good for
it's gummy. No, it's good. It's fine.
I don't want to kill you.
Yeah, we'll eventually be okay.
Well, at least
I guess I'm not a lozenge guy.
Oh no! But knowing you just say yes. You go, let's give it a shot. That's your attitude. I've got a question. Yeah. Angelica has got a question for you about that. So let's start with you, fourth generational farmer, fifth generation's in the business. You made a lovely comment last night when Jody you had a chat about something and she walked away and you had this beautiful look on your face and you just said out of nowhere, how lovely it is to have your daughters there. Can you sort of step into that one a bit?
Yeah,
I'd love to start there.
It really is. So I had no idea that my daughters would come back to the farm. I am the fourth generation on the farm, and my dad was a very dedicated cattleman, and I was too, and I never wanted to do anything except run the farm. Went to the University of Georgia, majored in animal science, came back and ran the farm. Married a lovely woman. We had 3 daughters and really good girls, and they weren't raised the way I was raised. They were raised to be very modern, young girls in their era, and their activities were dancing lessons and piano lessons and gymnastics and softball, and just never worked on the farm. And I never imagined they would come back to the farm. And they wouldn't have. While they were young, I started transitioning the farm into a very industrial monocultural cattle operation to what we do today, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about that. And I did not do it to attract my children to come back. I did it because I wanted to. But the best part of it is it did bring my children back. And 2 of the 3 and their spouses came back here and are actively involved in the management of the farm. And I'll be 70 this year. And it is very pleasing to me that I have a succession plan. Had they not, I have friends who have large farms and they have children who chose not to come back, and they have a problem. They have they need to terminate their operation or something, and I don't have to do that.
So how, I mean, it might be a pretty open-ended question, but like, what would you have done if they'd said, "Oh, look, Dad, this is lovely, but we just don't want to do it"? I mean, what sense would that have given you? I mean, all that hard work, not for nothing, because you've obviously worked and it's been what you wanted to do. As you said, it wasn't something you wanted them to necessarily come back. You didn't set it up for them. But I mean, and I guess as you said, it's something that a lot of farmers have to face. In succession, it's a really tricky thing.
Yeah, and luckily I did not have to deal with that. I think probably what I would pursue would be finding some motivated, talented person that doesn't have a farm to come back to, and just see what we could work out. I'm very fortunate I didn't have to do that.
And they're goers, aren't they? Jenny and Jody.
Oh yeah, they're great. They're fantastic. Yep. Knowing they're coming back, they were born in 80. My 3 daughters were born in 83, 86, 89. So the 86 and 89 model are the ones that came back. So they're, what did that put them in their 30s?
Yep.
And so they've got 30 years ahead of working career ahead of them. And by the way, those 2 daughters have 5 babies who could potentially be the 6th generation on the farm. Potentially, we'll see. But knowing that they're coming back for the next 30 years empowers us to make decisions based on the 30-year performance window. One of the things I think is wrong, horribly wrong in business, is we make, and I've been in business, in a different way. We make decisions based on the monthly report or the quarterly report or the annual report. And we don't even think about those things. When we're considering an investment or a change or a modification, we think of it in terms of generational. What's that going to do to us? Not what's that going to do to our bottom line for June of 2024. What's it going to do to the operation generationally?
But that's just a really smart way to do business, isn't it?
Well, I think that's the way that a perpetual business like a farm is supposed to be run. We talked about this earlier, but there are not very many non-depreciating assets. Precious gems, precious metals, maybe art. I don't know anything about art, but land are non-depreciating assets. When you invest in them, they're here. You own them. And of the non-depreciating assets that I know of, the only one that yields a return is land. And it yields a very, very small return, very small percentage. But it does. And planning an operation to keep a family together and to grow a farm, much of which is the investment is the land, is a different kind of rodeo than running a retail operation or manufacturing operation or construction operation.
I mean, nature doesn't work month to month, does it?
That's exactly right. Perpetual.
It's just on, and you're a cycles man, yeah. That's how I think. Is that how Jenny talks? And you mentioned it today. Like you're not linear. You work in
I think very in a very cyclical way. It's very difficult for me to have a linear conversation. I get off on other tangents, and there's been several things I've started with you. I didn't finish it because I got off on something else, and that's what works well for a farmer and some other professions. If you're going to be an engineer or an accountant or a number, that linear focused view is very desirable. But if you're going to be working with the cycles of nature, it's really a beneficial way to think about things.
Well, I guess it's a great example. Accountants, there are not many variables, are there? In their business, they've got clients, they've got dollars in, dollars out, they've got their procedures. In farming, there's so many variables, many of which are out of our control. So if we're too rigid and we're too prescriptive.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think there are other things. I think that there's just... And I think that one of the great ills that that's happened post-World War II is to try to bring that very linear approach to agriculture. The fact that we operate so predominantly as monocultures. My great-grandfather and grandfather owned this farm from 1866 until 1945, operated it in a very different way. It was many different species, marketed direct to the consumer. So my great-grandfather and grandfather raised, as I do, cows, hogs, sheep, goats, poultry, big garden, whatnot. They had employees, and every day, the family law is that every day they and the employees got up way before day and slaughtered something. It might have been a cow, might have been 3 hogs, might have been 50 chickens, it might have been some ducks, but they slaughtered something. Loaded it in a mule-drawn wagon, and an employee drove it 2 miles up the road to this little town of Bluffton and peddled what they had to sell. You understand, this is no refrigeration, no USDA inspection. It was, sell it or smell it.
Is that right? That's a classic.
And my father took over the farm post World War II, and he made the industrial changes that all his neighbors made to industrialize, commoditize, centralize. And on his watch, it became a monocultural cattle operation. And that allowed him to become an expert cattleman. And I think he probably, he was cowboy and I was cowboy, so we didn't talk about it. But I think he was proud of that. The fact that he didn't slaughter animals, he didn't raise vegetables, he was a cattleman. Very, very linear, very monocultural. And was successful. He accumulated more land and we had no debt. He did a good job. growing up, I never wanted to do anything except operate the farm, just like my dad did. I was, I want to be a very monocultural industrial cattleman, expert cattleman. and I went to the University of Georgia, majored in animal science, came back, and that's what I did for 20 years and loved it for most of that time. But at a point in the mid-90s, I became increasingly disillusioned with that production model and started moving away from it. And for the last 25 years, I have moved further and further away from
it. Getting back to your great-grandfather, father, let's start with your great-grandfather, 1866. Yeah, 1866.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think some of the challenges were for him at that time? Every generation is going to have a new set of challenges. Yeah. What do you think his pioneering challenges were?
And, we Harrises don't do a good job keeping written records. And so, most of what I know about my great-grandfather was his family lore. He was a senior at Emory University when the North invaded the South in 1861, the Civil War. And he and his classmates quit school and joined the Army, and they thought they had a deal with the Southern Army, like a band of brothers, to be kept together as one unit. And the Southern Army had about an 80% illiteracy rate and one unit of college boys that could read and write. So they broke the agreement and made all those guys officers. So he fought the war as a 20-year-old cavalry captain. And I don't know exactly. He had a farm about 40 miles north of here. And I don't know exactly what happened, but the farm was somehow lost in the war.
But as on the losing side, so to speak.
And he
was like,
I don't know how that worked. I don't think they seized land. I just don't know. I've heard several renditions of how, but he lost the farm, however that was. But he was very fortunate. He had an uncle who was a medical doctor right here in Bluffton, in this town, who started him over on the land we have now. And he farmed the land, that our farm, all his life, added to it a little bit, followed by his son, my grandfather, who did the same thing, then followed by my father, me, and now my daughters. Matter of fact, that little can there.
The red one?
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, it's heavy.
It is. So that is, that's a pistol holster. But this is coins.
Wow, they sound heavy.
It's a lead alloy called Babbitt.
Babbitt.
Yeah, and my great-grandfather who came here, he had no money, so he made him some money and paid his employees with it. This is, you can see that's $1. Some of them 50 cents.
And that's an official dollar. That was minted by
my great-grandfather.
Oh, this was his currency.
That's his currency. Yeah.
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 Is that right? And he made...
They're 150-something years old, so they're worn, just about worn out.
And did he have to forge that? Like, did he make the Babbitt, or you buy it in sheets or something, and then he pressed it?
Do you know what Babbitt is? No. So in the days before ball bearings and roller bearings, they had Babbitt bearings. And like if you had a water wheel, the shaft, of a steel shaft, you would have a Babbitt bearing holding it up, and it would be a wear item. It's soft and it's allowed to wear out. Yeah. And then once a week, you jack it up, put a new Babbitt bearing on, take the old one off, melt it. It's got a low melting point, and then pour another one. Yeah, so we have one for next Saturday. So that they were familiar with pouring Babbitt. So he made his own money with Babbitt.
That's fascinating.
And my grandfather continued to use Babbitt. And so post-World War II, after World War II, the United States Treasury Department, the Babbitt, it's called a Harris dollar.
Mm.
And the Harris dollar became the currency for Bluffton. People, and so people weren't paying taxes because they were operating off the system.
That's genius.
So post-World War II, the Treasury Department sent a man to Bluffton, an agent, to stop that. And my dad was bigger than me, talked louder than me, and he didn't want to say that anybody made his dad do anything. So when he tell the story, he'd say, after World War II, the Treasury Department sent a man down here to ask my daddy to quit making his own money. I say, did he ask him or tell him? He'd say, you go to hell.
So when was that? In 1940, when was that? When did that happen?
I think post-World War II, so it would have been 1945, 6, 7.
And it was working still then?
Yeah, they operated off that currency from 1866 until 1946 or something.
Fascinating. Mm. And why haven't you recreated the Harris dollar here?
I don't want that treasury man to come out. he may still be living in Atlanta.
He's got enough reasons to come down here. He doesn't need another reason to come down here.
I don't need the Treasury Department. I got everybody else on my case. I don't need the Treasury Department.
That is a classic. Was that a common thing in that time? Was this a unique situation that was its own little regional?
I'm old, but I'm not old enough to recall that. So I'm sure it was not unique, but I don't know how widespread it was.
That is a classic. Let's go back, because as I'm known to do, and clearly you're known to do too, Mr. Will, is just go off in tangents. Mm. Then again, I have known you, having listened to your interview with Joe Rogan. I love because he likes to go on tangents too, and I love that you said, "I'll get to that." Mm-hmm. I want to. You're very, very on purpose, which is fantastic. So you might have to pull me in the line every now and again. Mm. Let's start day one. Mr. Will. Will. I don't, yeah. So how about day one, Will Harris hits somewhere around here. We were born. When were you born? You don't think it was
I was born December 22nd, 1954, in a little hospital with 12 rooms in Blakely, Georgia. It had 12 patient rooms in Blakely, Georgia. And had a pretty normal farm childhood.
Only child.
I'm an only child. My dad was an only child. And pretty normal rural farm boy childhood. Great childhood, I'll say that. Graduated from high school, very average student. Very average student. I can remember a few days after my graduation, I was with my dad at a cattle auction, and the father of one of my classmates, who was a girl who was the valedictorian, was there. And he said, well, Will, congratulations, graduated from high school. I said, yes, sir. He said, I was real proud. Miriam was a valedictorian. She made it all the way through 12 years of school and never made a C. My daddy said, I don't believe you never made a B. My daughter Miriam made it all the way through 12 years of school and never made a B. My dad never missed it. He said, I don't believe you ever made a B either, did you?
Classic. But you know what? Lila, our daughter who you've met, she's homeschooling. Mm-hmm. And we have, one of the reasons why she is we've got a bit of a problem with conventional modern schooling. We don't think it's necessarily what they learn at school. is the best thing for, you know, life lessons and setting them up. You know, people are going to listen to this and say, "Oh, here he goes again." But my favourite saying is, "Our job as parents is to prepare our children to leave us." You know, and that's what we're trying to do. You know, when she's 18 and she leaves home, whatever, finishes school, whatever that looks like, we want her to go out in the world and persist and be resilient and survive and thrive. And we just don't think that normal schooling kind of sets kids up to do that. So back to you and your average student, maybe average in terms of their definition, you know.
Yeah, I changed my mind a lot about that. You know, I really graduated from school thinking that, you know, I just wasn't very smart. I mean, about this, the smart kids made A's, you know, and I didn't. And I'll say this, I wasn't particularly bothered by it. I knew there was stuff I did good, but I just didn't, you know, I would have told you with that reservation that, no, I'm not one of the smart kids. And I wasn't in that conventional kind of learning environment. When I went to Georgia, I came to realize that I had really good the ability to retain the things I was interested in, but I didn't want to go very deep into anything. I wanted to know a little bit about everything, but I didn't want to know too much about any of it. And that's what it takes to make a C. And I didn't do it, but I bet you I could have taken a double or triple load of classes and made a C in all of them. But an A was not in me. You know, I just wasn't that interested. And when I realized that, I didn't think it was interesting. I didn't think it was an attribute nor a deficiency. It just is. But now that I have lived for nearly 70 years, I have come to understand that is part of that being a generalist and thinking in a cyclical manner as opposed to a linear manner. And I think we do a pretty good job operating this farm of White Oak Pastures because that cyclical thought process works well. And I've seen a lot of farmers who were certainly better students than me that didn't do so well operationally because they knew a lot about a little instead of knowing a little about a lot. You know, that's a problem that I have with modern education. I went to the University of Georgia. I sent all three of my daughters through 4 years of college. They all graduated. But I won't do that with my grandchildren. If one or more of my grandchildren has a career path they want to follow, doctor, lawyer, school teacher, accountant, that needs a college education, then we'll probably do that. But if they want to come back here, or they don't know what they want to do, they just want to figure it out, we're not going to go to college and figure it out. We're not. Pappy is not going to pay for them to go to college and figure it out. You know, this linear siloed knowledge is so, the old expression was, you know, more and more about less and less until you know almost all there is to know about almost nothing. And that's the way that my perception of my education in college was. You know, I had genetics courses from guys that knew all there was to know about genetics, but didn't know anything about soil fertility. And I took soil fertility from a guy that knew all there was to know about soil fertility, but didn't know anything about microbial and so on and so on, and nutrition. And there's so much wrong with that. And one of the things that's wrong with it is it assumes that all the ecosystems operate the same way. I have great strength in the belief that the cycles of nature are what drives what we do, particularly here on this farm, but then beyond that. The soil cycle, the water cycle, mineral cycle, the carbon cycle, the grazing cycle, and we just own and on many cycles. Some of them we probably don't even recognize. And that's what makes life work. And that's what and when those cycles are operating optimally, it spins off an abundance. And that abundance is what I produce, it's what I live on. All that coal and oil and natural gas in the ground, that's the abundance of nature when the cycles of nature were just operating optimally in the era of the dinosaur. And today on White Oak Pastures, the cycles of nature operate far more optimally than they did 25 years ago because we've worked on them. We've worked on fixing them. My dad started in 1945, and I continued on until 1995, breaking the cycle, overtly, intentionally breaking the cycles of nature, forcing a monocultural production of tufted 85 Bermuda grass grazed by cattle. If you lived on my farm and you weren't tufted 85 Bermuda grass or a cow, I'd kill you. And I was really good at killing things that weren't tufted 85 Bermuda grass and cow. Side means kill. Homicide, kill people. Insecticide, kill insects. Fungicide, kill fungi, on and on the sides. And what I became was an expert at using the sides to kill things to promote the monoculture. And the monoculture no monoculture, but the monoculture that I had of grass and cows weren't producing an abundance. I mean, I was producing a product I could sell, but I was throwing the cost off for somebody else to bear. So my farm is on Devil's Branch. It flows into Spring Creek. It flows into the Flint River. It flows into Apalachicola Bay, which is the Gulf of Mexico. And there's a dead zone in Apalachicola Bay that's as big as the state of Massachusetts. It used to be a thriving oyster ground. But all the pesticides that me and my friends and relatives and neighbors have destroyed that. It's a dead zone now. So that's a cost. And me and the other people that created that cost aren't going to bear it. Everybody's going to bear that cost.
And nature's bearing that now too, yeah. Nature is bearing that cost. I mean, the destruction of it, the industry that's not there anymore.
Don't you worry about nature. She'll bat last and have her way. But yeah, I worry about the fact that we're driving so many species, plants and animals and microbes into extinction. I believe that every ecosystem has plants and animals and microbes that work in symbiotic relationships with each other to create the abundance. And when a plant or animal or microbe is driven into extinction, it's going to change things. Now, nature's powerful, and something else is going to happen. But it's going to be different. We've changed the direction. So, I worry about these things.
And it's often the thing that jumps in is worse, right? Like you take a hierarchy of predatory animals, and you take one out, whether it's a weed or a plant or it's an insect or something, you remove that from that chain of supply.
I don't think we're definitely going to change it. I doubt that we improve it.
No.
Nature spent billions or trillions of years evolving this system that produces the abundance. Again, all that coal and oil and natural gas in the ground. And I can see what we've done. So one of the things that changed me in the mid-90s is for a number of reasons. I looked at the soil that was my land, owned by my dad and my granddad and my great-granddaddy. And then I walked down in the woods, 20 yards away, you got a handful of, and this was soil, and this is dirt. This is 5+% organic matter, just teeming with plants and animals and microbes, stuff you can see, stuff you can't see. And this is just, it's a dead mineral medium. There's some life in it, but it's a tiny fraction of the life that's here. And we did that, me and my dad primarily, with, again, tillage, chemical fertilizer, pesticides, and the desire to operate it as a monoculture.
And tell me about that. I mean, because from where I sit now and definitely where you sit, that's how we used to operate in a conventional sense. What was the attraction of your father? So let's take it back to him. Maybe you can't speak for him, but you may have a bit of a sense of it. What made it attractive to head down that monoculture, conventional, whatever, all those words?
I know that answer. I mean, I know that story. It's before I was born, but I know the story.
Yeah.
So right over there, that peanut company is right out that window.
Yeah.
There's they had a fish fry, and sponsored by a salesman for a fertilizer company. Invited all the farmers to come and eat free fish, and he gave all of them a couple of 200-pound bags of ammonium nitrate fertilizer. He gave all the farmers a bag with 5 or 10 pounds or whatever in it. And his request was, go home, put it on your grass, wet it, put some water on it, and leave it for 3 days and come back and look at it. And my dad did that. When he got back, where he put the ammonium nitrate fertilizer, the grass was that much higher than the rest of them. And, my dad said, shit, I want it all to look like that. And from 1946 until the mid-90s, he or I put nitrogen fertilizer on every acre we had. And we could see the benefit, but we couldn't see the cost. We couldn't see the oxidation of the carbon in the soil. We couldn't see the destruction of microbes in the soil. There's a lot we couldn't see. But you can see what's good. You couldn't see what was bad. So what do you do? Well, the truth is, chemical nitrogen fertilizer wasn't invented in 1946. It was invented in the 1800s. But it was so expensive that nobody used it. But then when the world invested a fortune in munitions manufacturing for World War II, and the war was over, all that infrastructure was standing there, and it could be converted from munitions to chemical nitrogen fertilizer. So it became very cheap. And that's when people started using it, and we're still using it, and it's still doing damage. And we could talk about the damage it does when it gets in the groundwater. We could talk about the damage it does when it gets in lakes and rivers. Well, let's just talk about the damage that's done on White Oak Pastures. We can see that. I can show it to you.
Mm. And that started in the Second World War. And what was the other one? Pesticides.
Yeah, I think that I think that pesticides came about from the war effort as well. I think the nerve gas and other things. I think that I know the use of tractors. I don't think tractors are evil, but the fact is, the farm boys left here in 1940, and they've been plowing mules, and they went to the European theater and operated tanks. When they came home, they didn't want to plow a mule. So tractors, well, again, I don't think tractors are evil, but we were just talking about how the whole food production thing turned upside down post-World War II.
And then, so there's the inputs of chemical fertilizers, the urea or ammonium-based fertilizers, pesticides, all essentially a result of the Second World War, repurposing factories and materials. What about the mindset of monoculture, Bermuda grass, or year out? Like, what was the sense of? Because that's like massive simplification of nature, right?
Well, it made life so much easier. I mean, you could, again, my dad became an expert cattleman. He didn't have to know anything about hogs and sheep. He took pride in the fact he was an expert cattleman. And, he and I would have fought. We fought anyway. But we would have fought over the fact that whole evolution dumbed farming down. He could become an expert in cattle production because he didn't have to know anything about anything but cattle production. And it didn't make him a less smart person, but it caused him to have less focus on all these other things, so he could become better at that. But it made him vulnerable to big players taking advantage, because when he produced those cattle, he didn't have a market for the beef. He didn't have the capacity to slaughter the beef. He didn't have a market for the beef. So he was, it didn't happen all at one time. But since that time, we've been increasing, from a marketing perspective, we have less and less and less players to market to, who had more and more and more market power. And that's why the percentage of the food dollar that the farmer gets is so much lower than it used to be. I think it's, don't hold me to these figures, you can look it up, but I think it's less than 15 cents. And it depends on what commodity you're talking about. I think on the average it's less than 15 cents of the food dollar goes to the farmer. And, in White Oak Pastures, 100 cents of the food dollar goes to White Oak Pastures. Now, I got a lot of costs, but I don't mind that. White Oak Pastures is the largest employer in Clay County, Georgia. You're in Clay County, Georgia right now. Clay County, Georgia is the poorest county in America. We got 170 or so employees. Payroll is about $100,000 every Friday. And I get 100 cents of that dollar. Now, I spend $5 million a year on payroll, but I spend $5 million a year on payroll in Clay County, Georgia. It stays here. I don't get to keep it all, but it stays here. It's a much healthier system. It's healthier for other reasons too. When we had the pandemic, the big slaughter plants closed down, and it could have happened, but I'm very proud to tell you, we never missed a day slaughtering cattle, not one day.
So no one turned up here and said, shut down, there's close contact, there's disaster.
There was that discussion, but nobody made me do it. Somebody's going to have to make me do that. And nobody showed up to make me do it. We served food. We got a restaurant, and they did tell us we couldn't serve food anymore, but we did, and we just never quit. Now, of my 170 employees, probably all of us got COVID at some point. I did, and I feel like everybody did, but not one day. We kept working. I don't think I've ever videoed a TV screen before, but during that COVID panic, I was watching CNN one morning putting on my boots, and the CEO of Tyson Foods said the food production chain is dead or something to that effect. And I snatched my phone up and videoed it, and we didn't know what happened in Bluffton. We heard about it, but we kept operating.
But isn't that a great lesson though? Like that's like a shining example of resilience, sovereignty. Fuck the pandemic and all the other stuff that happened around that. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but it's like, what a shining example of resilience in a community, employment, food supply, sustainable, the economics, the whole thing, health. I mean, and the food that you continued to supply was the most nutritious stuff that people could have anyway.
Well, I think we are quite resilient, but the real strength of it is, if we did falter, it wouldn't starve the whole country. I don't. I think that one of the many places we've gone wrong is this centralization of food production, so that we're producing so much of our food, not just meat, whether it's oats or rice or grapes or whatever the livestock, probably especially, but it's so centralized and controlled by so few players that, and let's talk about this. Those big players have achieved incredible efficiency. Everything that's been done for the last 80 years has been to make it more and more and more efficient. And I'm going to tell you now, efficiency and resiliency are yin and yang. The more efficient, and I'm not anti-efficiency, but I'm here to tell you that the more efficient a system becomes, the less resilient it is. The higher you build a building, the greater the opportunity for it to fall. So, I think that we've really taken great risks in making this uber efficient food production system that could fail.
And do you put that under the banner of industrialisation? Is that kind of
centralisation?
Centralisation.
I think,
what's the difference? What you tell us the difference?
Yeah. I think there are three things that I'm in opposition to: industrialization, commoditization, and centralization. And we can talk all day long about all three of them, but centralization is kind of, and they're all part of this conversation, but centralization is the small number of really high volume food production and processing centers that we've got, as opposed to a decentralized. So centralization, commoditization. There was a time when my great-grandfather and grandfather were running this farm. They were very successful because they really put a lot of emphasis on making their product the best it could be, not because of pride, but because they wanted more for it. It offered them the opportunity to charge a premium because they produced a really good product. It forced them to produce a really good product.
So a focus on quality.
And commoditization, on the other hand, is putting a lowest possible acceptance of what you're producing. And if you are focused on quality, selling into the commodity market, you go broke. Because what you need to be doing is producing as low a quality, cheap a product as you can to get the commodity price.
And high turnover.
Yeah. And then, of course, industrialization is this what we were talking about earlier, moving this whole production system from that very cyclical appreciation to that very linear approach. So commoditization, centralization, industrialization.
And that the triad is essentially, that applies to not just agriculture, that applies to big pharma too, or pharmaceutical health, the health, industry, or the health kind of.
Probably. I'm a farm guy. I mean, I'm sure you're right, but I don't know those applications. But I know exactly what's happened in agriculture and food production, and I just told you.
And also, I listened to yourself and Jenny on Joe Rogan there about, I can't remember how Jenny phrased it. It was like, you create what was it, selling Band-Aids and bullets? Is that it? Selling Band-Aids and bullets?
Yeah, that's my. It's my. Yeah.
Is that yours? Yeah, there you go. That's great. Explain that one.
God, what a trick is to sell Band-Aids and bullets. If you sell drugs and pesticides, you're creating your own market. It's just a great deal. You sell a product that has a perceived benefit but causes a health problem, then you sell the health pharmaceutical to fix that. And I'm gonna say this. And this is opinion. I can't prove this. But when that fertilizer salesman came over here, I'm sure he was very innocent in his belief that this ammonium nitrate fertilizer that used to be part of the explosive program was really good for farmers. And I bet he believed that. And probably when the first pesticides were produced, the chemist, whoever produced it, probably thought he or she had come up with a technology that was going to benefit mankind and food production. But I don't think that's true anymore. I think that the sophistication now is the point when these manufacturers of pesticides sell a product that fixes a problem. There's every understanding it's going to cause another problem. It's going to require another pesticide. It's going to fix that problem, but create another problem. And that'll open up the market for another pesticide. And there's no end to it. There's simply no end to it. And all that money for those pesticides is flowing from rural America into these multinational pesticide producers, and the damage is remaining here in rural America. This is where the people are getting cancer and having atrazine in the groundwater and on, and species, we are talking about species extinction and all these terrible things that happen. And there's so much money involved, I don't know how it's ever going to be corrected.
This episode of the Regenerative Journey is brought to you by Optiweigh, trusted by regenerative farmers and land stewards. An Optiweigh unit in your paddock makes precision livestock a reality. It's Australian-made for tough Australian conditions and puts more profit back in your pocket. Visit optiweigh.com.au/Charlie875 to save $875 on the purchase of a sheep or cattle unit. We actually have one of both, and we've got another sheep one coming next week, and I can't tell you how much control it gives us. We know every day the average of each mob they're basically an in-paddock weighing machine. We know exactly what the average daily gains of those animals are every single day that the machine's in the paddock, saving a lot of time and a lot of stress, and easy management guaranteed with an Optiweigh unit. Get yourself one with that code. This episode is also brought to you by Tarwin Park Training. For over 40 years, I've been teaching natural sequence farming because understanding how your landscape works is the key to restoration. What's their core belief? Plants manage water to build our landscape, and they still can. Tarn Park Training empowers people to read their land and restore its natural processes. Their upcoming online course, Learning Landscapes, launches later this year. Head to tarnparktraining.com.au/Charlie Arnott to register your interest and receive 10% off when the course goes live. I can't tell you how much I would encourage you to get on down to one of their courses. We've actually hosted 2 of their courses here in the last 4 or 5 years to great success, and we have a number of their contours that Stuart Andrews has designed in a number of our paddocks, and we had some rain last night, 16 mils, and they've collected water. The principles are very, very sound and the practice is easy. So register your interest there for 10% off when the course goes live. Check out all the other courses they're doing. An absolute must if you're keen to restore the hydrological function of your landscape. Well, Zach Bush has done, he often talks about the glyphosate. I can't remember what he calls the Mississippi River, like the glyphosate alley or something, and the correlation between glyphosate use and then health impacts, disease and cancers. As glyphosate use increased, there was this sort of increase in those health impacts.
Yeah, Zach's got to talk about that. I mean,
that's right. That's his thing. But it's like it sits reasonably comfortably in this conversation in terms of that's the result of the intention or the business model. More so.
And there's, I certainly can't prove there's no doubt in my mind that is what's happening, and I believe that the brilliant people that run these companies probably know and understand it. It's just so much money, you can't not do it.
Yeah. Tell me, I put a little call out to some of my followers, people the other day, yesterday I was actually, and I said, have you got any questions for Will? And I had a few that did come back. Can we given we're in the sort of big pharma world, what's quite topical in Australia, and I'm sure it's to some extent over here, but I think you guys, I want to say you guys, in the US it's been sort of happening for a lot longer, the mRNA vaccines that are being developed and researched for use in livestock. That's a big thing. Like literally in the last couple of days there's been reports about different departments funding research with other organisations, and I think a pretty clear signal that is going to be, encouraged and supported to be made available for livestock use, if not mandated, hopefully not. Where's that up to over here? Have you got a view?
Yeah. I can't tell you I know a heck of a lot about mRNA vaccines, but I can tell you that when I was operating uber industrially, my drug salesman loved me and I loved my drug salesman. And he would come by and say, we've got something new. And when he said that, he had my rapt interest. Whatever he had to sell, I would buy it. And I simply gave them everything that the drug salesman wanted to sell me. And I can't tell you that I ever saw an ill effect of that with my eyes. But when I made the decision to change, I ceased to give my animals anything. I didn't give them any vaccinations. And I did really well. They were fine. At a point, we have a disease called blackleg. You have that in Australia? Mm-hmm. It's in the soil, but it doesn't manifest itself unless the conditions are just right. So 1 year I lost, a dozen or so calves to blackleg. Hadn't given blackleg for years, hadn't lost any for years. That year, I guess the conditions were just right. We lost some calves. And I told my guys, you can go back to giving them blackleg. And we do, the vaccine. Okay. And but I don't think we give them anything else. And I think that blackleg vaccine's got some other things in it.
Like a 5-in-1 or
something like that. Yeah. But very lean on the side of giving vaccines or antibiotics or ionophores, and we don't use any fly control at all.
And you certainly advertise, front and centre, you're not using glyphosate and not using, I can't remember what the wording was, chemicals generally, certainly in the paddock situations.
Yeah, I hadn't used any chemical in probably 20 years, any pesticides on 20 years. I got a new pest, a non-native invasive plant called tropical soda apple, and it is kicking my butt right now. And now we bought a big 55-gallon drum, no, it's 100-something gallon drum of an organic spray that's supposed to. We're experimenting with it. I hope it does it.
So it's a commercial product you've found that someone else makes. It's not a brew you put together.
No, yeah, I bought it.
And that's
from an organic provider, and I hope it does. I hope it works. I don't know what I'll do if it doesn't. We'll figure it out. But it's a problem. It's a non-native invasive. What that means is it came in here from somewhere else, and we have not brought in what controls it where it was. When you've got a biome, you've got all kinds of living creatures, and you've got things that control those living creatures. And we do things that get it thrown off. And of course, in the case of this, I think that, I don't know how I got here, birds or whatever, but it's here and it didn't used to be here.
Is there a biological control? Is there a bug or a beetle or a weevil or something?
So the University of Florida, in Florida is 50 miles that way.
Mm-hmm.
The University of Florida brought up some beetles from Paraguay or Uruguay, South American country. And it was cleared. They were found, believed to be safe, not become another pest. And they sent me some to try. And some days, this is last year, some days I think they're working, some days I think they're not working. But the concern was that we're a little too far north, that they may not overwinter. So I don't know whether they're working or not, but they're certainly at this point not adequate.
And nothing's going to eat it. Like your goats not eating it, sheep, nothing. Tastes like shit.
Well, it's just arm. It's got thorns on it.
Yeah.
My cow manager told me he thought he saw some cattle eating really young, tender stuff, and I can't catch him doing it. He may be right, but I've been. He's able to spend more time with them than I am. But I spend a lot of time, but he's more. So he would see it before I would. He thinks he's seen it, and maybe it will. Maybe they'll develop an appetite for it and help control it. And,
I guess
I've seen things like that happen before.
Yeah, and I guess the more diverse their normal diet is in their pasture base, the more they might be inclined to nibble on it every now and again. Because it's sort of something in there. They're so clever that something that in this diverse pasture might offset toxicity, or even things like you said magnesium. Do you put out is it bentonite or dolomite? What do you put out? What's your magnesium?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I buy it from a supplement company.
Yeah,
and the tags here somewhere.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, because something like dolomite, being like a clay, it'll help. Drag out some of those toxins. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. Tell me, I'm going to step back in time again to get a bit chronological. Home to the farm. No, Georgia State University.
University of Georgia.
University of Georgia. Did your studies there, came home, did it as Dad did, and at some point there was, I don't know, was it a single event? Was it an epiphany? Was it a series of tension events that kind of went, like, I got to do something differently? Was there, is there a moment, or was it just a like a long period of
Well,
stress?
kind of both. I think that what happened over a longer period of time is because I was a very heavy-handed abuser. If the rate, if it was 2 cc's per 100, I'd give them 3. If it was a pint per acre, I'd put a quart. So I think that had caused me to start to see at some level the unintended consequences of those technologies.
What did you see? What were you saying? Remember?
Well, the best example would be that soil I told you about. Just the difference in where it was.
Can I get that soil over there? You stay there.
Yeah, sure.
Because this is really interesting.
But if there was an event, it was we were loading out a load of calves one morning, and you can put nearly 100 500-pound calves on a double-decker truck. And we loaded a truck, and the ones on, and I've done it a lot of times in my life, but the ones on top were urinating and defecating on the ones on the bottom, and they were going to be on that truck maybe 30 hours without food or water or rest. I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't.
And when was that, 20?
Yeah, probably mid-90s.
Trying to get you in focus there again. Mid-90s. So what's that? That's
30
years ago.
Nearly 30 years ago. But now, that's when I started to change. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you I hadn't used any of those technologies over 30 years. But by the time I was 20 years into it, 25 years, I had ceased to use all of them.
So you didn't go cold turkey. You just you eased out of it.
It was pretty cold turkey, but not completely cold turkey.
Pretty cold. I'm just trying to get you focused. Don't you just have a sip on that. Trying to get that face of yours back in focus.
Handsome, ain't it?
It's very handsome.
Yeah, well,
it's very handsome.
I get it all the time.
Well, I have to say, Matt and Maddie, who we came with the trip today, come with us, our nanny, Madeline, Mads.
Little girl.
No, that's Lila. Mads, who's our
nanny. Yeah.
She was telling me about, she was really excited to be here for lots of reasons, but she said, Will's voice is just like, she was going.
She's a sweet child.
She was very excited to just hear your voice and to see it better. So I'm
trying to enunciate clearly so those Australians can understand what I'm saying. I'm profoundly Southern.
I love it. I don't want you to go faster. I want you to tell us everything you can. Tell me, so over that 5 years, what did that look like? That change. So you weren't, those weaners shitting and pissing on each other, and there's like, I cannot do that. What was the next step? What was like? Did you sit down there and write a list of things you didn't want to do? Did you?
I don't list. I don't write lists down much, but it's the equivalent of that. The hardest thing I did was give up ammonium nitrate or urea fertilizer. That was hard, man. It was so hard. It's just such a beneficial flush. You see the good, you don't see the bad, as we discussed earlier. You give an animal a hormone implant, you can see the difference over a 100-day period if you got one out there that didn't get it. But it just doesn't strike you. But you use some nitrogen fertilizer, and it's just so apparent, so beneficial. And giving up nitrogen fertilizer was hard. And we learned how to do without it. And then the same true with some other inputs. It's hard to give it up. I've never had a drug problem, but I can understand people who have drug problems.
You had an addiction.
I had an addiction. Yeah. I did have an addiction. That's exactly right.
And you said you got rid of the vaccines. You went, I'm not going to do this. Like back then, you didn't do any of that. When did you stop spraying or killing everything that wasn't Bermuda grass?
I didn't write it down, but then
in that
in
period.
the same window, early 2000, 1995, early 2000s.
What did your staff say? Were your family? Was your dad? Was
My dad had dementia, and he was not active in the farm. And my staff, I had probably 3 or 4 employees, minimum wage, labor time. They just did what Will said, and they probably thought they could probably. They're smart people. They probably see the unintended consequences that weren't good, but we didn't talk about it. We just, all right. I'd known it more, but during that window, I ran the farm very autonomously, so there wasn't much discussion. Today, there's a lot of discussion. We've got a lot of smart people that have valuable understandings
and valuable input. And what about your neighbours? Do they? Not that I imagine you give a shit about what they think, but were the neighbours saying stuff to other people and getting back to you? Did you feel like you were the weirdo doing all this crazy stuff, unconventional?
Probably, but nobody said anything to me, and I didn't care what they said anyway. If they had, I wouldn't have cared. They just that didn't bother me. I'm sure they would have liked it if I was a 102-pound Vermont gay music major, but I wasn't. And it's hard to. It's hard. I don't care who you are. It's hard to be uber critical of somebody that you were raised with, that weighs as much as you do, that doesn't care what you think. I wasn't a good target.
I can imagine.
So I didn't have any trouble.
Was there a time? Can you recall a time when someone or a group of people went, "Hey, Will," like generally curious about what you were doing, and said, "Can you tell us what you're doing?" Why is that working, or why is that cow look healthier? Or
not my neighbors, because my neighbors are very
never the neighbors.
They're good, huh?
There's never the neighbors.
Yeah, well, my neighbors they're good people.
Yeah.
Now let's just be clear: they're wonderful people.
Totally.
They're family people. They work hard. They farm like their daddy and their granddaddy taught them to farm, and like they learned at University of Georgia or Auburn University, and they feel strongly about. These are not bad people, but they're not interested in what I'm doing. But now we do have people that come here, and in fact I formed a 501c3 nonprofit. We know what that is in this country, to educate people and train people, and we do that. We've got a person to run that, and they hold sessions. We have a meeting place up here that we have classes. They varies a couple times a month. Be 15 to 30 people that come here, and we teach them what we know.
And that is the Centre for Agriculture Resilience.
Yep.
Is that online, or that's all here?
It's online.
It's online version as well.
Oh well, it has a website.
Yeah, but to join the curriculum and go through that, it's a face-to-face here.
Yeah, I think they're looking at putting the curriculum online, but they hadn't done it yet. This is not for a long time. The only funding it had was me, and now we get a little funding from other people since we got the nonprofit status. But you don't have a lot of money, so we just got to do it as we can. I never intended for it to be a road show. I strongly believe that one of the things we do wrong is treat every ecosystem similarly, when every ecosystem is very specific. And I don't want my people going to the mountains or the tundra or the plains or the tropics to tell them how to do it. If you want to come here, we know how to do it, and tell them.
So I guess that's about, show them what you're doing literally and, theoretically, and give them the choice to adapt to their environment. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not. I mean, we don't try to force feed anybody anything. We just give them the benefit of our experience and what has worked, and we don't mind telling what don't work, what does not work. Mm-hmm.
Just about that, Angelica asked you the question there in your Jeep before, and I want to go back to that, and it was around making mistakes, or some people call it failures, but I get a strong sense from you, what I know about you, and the conversations we've had. Getting something wrong is not a mistake; it's not a failure. What's your attitude to that?
Well, the difference between a mistake and a failure is when you make a mistake and it whips your ass. A mistake is you make a mistake and you fix it. And we've had a lot of mistakes. I don't think we've ever had a failure because I think one of the things we do well is acknowledge the mistakes we make. We make a lot of them. And it does not embarrass me one bit to say, whoa, I thought that was a good idea, but it's not. Let's quit doing that. What can we do to fix what I have done? And I did it. I need you to help me fix it. Mm-hmm. And I told you earlier, it amazes me how people don't want to do that. And it just doesn't bother me a bit. I'm very bold about making decisions, making changes, and I'm very open about the fact that some of them work and some of them don't. And I know that up front. And when one don't work, it just don't work. And we're not going to do that anymore. And we got to fix what we caused. And I'm always surprised when people make mistakes and then want to deny it didn't work. That just amazes me.
So is there any advice you can give? I mean, you have interns that come here, so they're really hands-on for 3 months at a time. You have people listening to podcasts. You've got your book. You've got the Centre for Agricultural Resilience. What message in any of that or all of that do you tell those generally younger people, I guess, and they don't have to necessarily be young, who are wanting to change? Is there any sort of messages you have for them about, that failure, mistake kind of concept?
Yeah. Let's just talk mostly about all those people, really, but the interns that come here. One of the things that I drive home to them is, I tell them there are three legs on this stool. There's production out here in the field, and that's the fun part. That's what we all want to do. And then there's processing, which is making it marketable. And then there's marketing, which is monetizing it. And a mistake I see so many people make is they fall in love with the production side of it. I mean, it's hard not to fall in love with the cycles of nature operating optimally, producing an abundance. That's good stuff, and it's fun. But consumers don't buy hogs and cows and sheep. They buy beef and pork and lamb.
Lamb. I love it.
And they're not going to buy but so many tomatoes, and not going to buy but so many carrots. And all these things that we produce in these wonderfully operating ecosystems that we develop has got to be made marketable. And then after you make it marketable, you got to find that market. And I told you this is the poorest county in the country. I don't sell much in this county except to my employees, and they get it for half price. So, I would go broke if all I did was produce and sell here, I'd go broke quickly, very quickly. So finding those markets that will pay my cost of operation is 3 days on the stool.
That's great. I love that. That's it's so simple, isn't it?
This whole thing's pretty simple.
Yeah.
That's part of that. Not being a linear, I don't see much. If this wasn't simple, I couldn't do it.
But not the irony, but the interesting thing is, you're running. A simple business. I mean, there's complexity. Actually, let's talk about that. Complexity versus complication. Can we talk about that? Because there's a difference, right?
Mm-hmm. And it is, and I think it kind of gets back to that linear versus cyclical. A complex business is very cyclical. A linear business is very complex, complicated. I said wrong. Complicated. And I think that whatever business you're endeavoring to operate, you got to figure it out. You got to figure out what approach to take. And if you were operating a manufacturing plant, an automobile manufacturing plant with steel parts coming in one end and automobiles coming out the other end, that is highly complicated and highly scalable and on compared to a farm, which is the opposite, yin and yang.
And there's also a difference between scalable and repeatable, right?
Yeah. So what we do here is not highly scalable. It's highly replicatable.
Yeah.
There could be a lot of white oak pastures, and my hope was that there would be a lot of white oak pastures. And then from a scalability perspective, we are bigger than I ever thought we would be, and we're probably bigger than I want to be. Things happen, and when I ran out of processing capacity 20 years ago for my cattle, and had to go to the bank and borrow $3 million and build that processing plant that I showed you. I had to scale up to $20-something million because I had to kill that many cattle so I could service my debt, so I could make my business work. That was not best case. Best case would be a co-op. I'm not really basically a co-op guy, but I do recognize the benefit. I do see how they can work well. Or somebody deciding to take on that processing function for a group of farmers, which is what I would prefer to see. There are a few of those in this country, and I would have been a happier camper the last 20 years, if I had not had to build that processing plant. It's still the part of my business that I enjoy the least. I love what's going on in the pasture. The processing plant, it's highly regulated. We do, and I'll say this: I do as little of as I can. I got some really good people running that plant, and they are not micromanaged. I can assure you. They do a good job, and it's fine.
But it's also, as you said, it's essential now for your business to value add. You got to that point where you either had to, I think you might have said it yesterday or today, you got to that point where you had to shut it all down or go to that next step, You had to get big or get out.
When I started transitioning the farm from the industrial model to this model, I never intended to build a processing plant. I started out using the excess capacity that a few very small processors had here. 2 cows here, 1 cow there, 3 cows over there. And there was a market for the product, and it was working okay. And what they were charging me was okay. It was all fine. But they could not do enough volume for me to make my business work. I was losing money because they weren't doing enough of them. I'd given up selling in the commodity market. I couldn't sell enough of them through their market.
And this is in 2006? Was it when just...
Yeah, between 2000 and 2006 is when that was happening.
Yeah.
And I tried really hard to not build a processing plant. I made these other local owners deals that I would finance the expansion of their plant and do business with them, and they could, and they just didn't want to do it, and I didn't blame them. Most of them were older people or not in real good shape financially, or had some other restriction on them. So ultimately, I tried a lot of different things to not build a processing plant, but ultimately I built it. A group of farmers about 2 hours from here were having organizational meetings to build a plant that was owned by a lot of different farmers. And I was pretty deep in the grass-fed beef business by that time. And most of them hadn't been in it, but they thought it was a good idea. And I really wanted that to work. So I went to an organizational meeting one night in a college auditorium, a high school auditorium in that town. And by the time the meeting started, I knew it was a non-event. I heard farmers I didn't even know say, "Well, I ain't going to do it if I can't get X dollars a head for my cows." Well, you ain't going to get that. Or I don't think we ought to hire a manager. I think we ought to all just run it and take turns. And just all kind of things that I knew wasn't going to work. And so when the meeting started, I was in there about 5 minutes, and I left. And then on the way home, that 2-hour drive, is when I decided I was going to build a plant. Because I either had to build the plant or go back to operating as an industrial commodity. And I hope most people don't have to do that. I hope they don't have to build that plant.
So what about replicating in another state? Because one question that came through was, could you set something up in another state, or another county, far, like geographically, like a sensible, whatever that is, distance from here, and replicate it there? Is that something you'd do?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't do it. I think that somebody...
You wouldn't do it because you got enough shit to do.
Yeah. I'm not interested in this, but somebody needs to do it. I think what we've done here is highly replicatable. And it's not going to be just like this one, because it's got to fit a different set of economic circumstances and production circumstances, but it's highly replicatable. And one of the things, part of what our nonprofit, CFAR, Center for Agricultural Resilience, does is helps people understand how that needs to look.
Well, I guess would it be fair to say you teach some principles? When you teach what you do here, is there a principle-based kind of a program that people can adapt? Because that's often the issue, isn't it? People go, "Oh, I'm going to do what Will Harris does, and I'm going to be in Montana, and I'm just going to do this, I'm going to do that," and it's just not going to work. I guess it's all care, no responsibility.
Yeah, I think there's while every operation will vary dramatically based on geography and economy and market and other circumstances, there's a lot to be learned by spending some time with somebody who's got a program that's working. You're going to find some things that you like that you want to implement, and you're going to find some things that you sure don't want to do that. So it's highly. I think it's going to be highly variable. I think that if we could possibly get a lot of these started, it would be very beneficial for the consumer and the producer and the economy, certainly the rural economy. But I think they're going to look very, very different. And I think that, taking the dollar store, build one on every corner, just alike. Starbucks.
No.
It's not going to be like that.
It's not that model. Talking about business, have you got any general business advice for, let's not even think necessarily agricultural, but is there some sound business principles that you have developed, you've picked up, you've adopted or adapted that you could pass on to people? Is there any habits, any rituals in terms of a business approach that you could pass on?
I think I'm probably not the person to answer that. I can tell you, what may be the benefit of what I've learned in myself is, I don't think I am a really good businessman. I kind of disdain cash.
Explain.
So I need enough blood to pump through my body to make my organs work. I don't want an extra 5 gallons of blood that's over here in case I need it. And I realize it's not a good analogy, but I treat money that way. And I need a certain amount of money to be able to pay my bills every Friday. Pay my $100,000 to my employees, pay whatever else we owe, power bill. Our power bill is $25,000 a month. Pay what we owe. But if there's any extra money, I'm sort of looking for something else to do with it. And that has been good for us, and it's also been bad for us in some ways. So when it's kind of interesting. So the rest of my management staff are young people, 20s, 30s. And we meet once a week around this table right here. And I say, all right, I tell you what I think we ought to do. And my daughter will say, oh, shit, Daddy. We're not going to do that, are we? And it's interesting to me because I'm nearly 70 and they're 30 in the 30s. And I always have thought that it was the young generation that had to be kept back and the old man had to be drug followed. It's kind of the opposite here. So, and they're right a lot. Let me say this. I've gone into a number of businesses as part of the farm that didn't work out well. I can tell you, producing black soldier flies, and I think that can work, but it didn't work. I'm still not through with it, but I spent a lot of money and it didn't work. And other things, that I thought was a good idea. So.
Do you think that's you, or it's their generation? Are they not standing up? This is not a criticism of anyone or anything. It's just the dynamics. You're the boss. Well, I guess they've got a lot of respect for you, and you're the patron. You're the.
I own 100% of the company.
Say again.
I own 100% of the company.
Yeah. So, well, you're that as well. So you ultimately make decisions, but you also the patriarch of the business. Do you think they just give you that opportunity because you're the boss, or is it to do with age and not being, is it a generational thing? You may not know the answer because I certainly do.
I don't know if this is the answer or not, but my response would be, I'm glad I got them because I think they keep me from doing things that might not be the best. I think that This has served me well and not well, but I tend to see all the reasons that it'll work and ignore the reasons it won't work, whatever the project is. And that will really propel you to doing some different kinds of things, but it can also propel you into a problem. And it's done me both ways.
But I guess that's like, you got to have the yin and the yang, haven't you? You got to have like whether it's you or someone else is going, we should do this and do that. And you got the black hats, you got the green hats, the yellow. I can't remember who was which, but in that six hats thinking, that kind of thing. Yeah. It's a healthy dynamic.
It is, and I'm glad we got it. That's the reason I set it up. And I didn't have it for a long time. And I should tell you this. I think I'll lift this off. It's important. If I started today, if I continued to stay an industrial commodity cow guy, monocultural cow guy, and I started today making the changes to do what I did 25 years ago, I think I'd fail dismally. I think that the success we enjoyed was a window of opportunity that we just absolutely, fortunately, fell in. I'd love to tell you I saw it coming and I planned it and it was brilliant on my part. It was not. I built I did what I did for the reasons I told you, and I built the slaughter plant to process 50 head a week. That was my goal. And I don't know why I thought that was the right number, but I did. I thought I could get to that level of production on my own without any cows from anybody else at some point, and that's where I wanted to go. So I built it. I spent $2.3 million, I think, building it, and it wouldn't work. At 50 head a week, I was losing money. So I spent another $700,000 to get to about $3 million, and it doubled the capacity. And I just so happened that we had over-engineered some things, and it started making a little money. So so I was producing that level of stuff, and I was able to sell it to Whole Foods Market. This is the part that's fortunate. I was able to sell 100 head a week wholesale to Whole Foods Market and Publix. And I sold Whole Foods Market. This is the part about the time. I sold Whole Foods Markets and Publix the first pound of American grass-fed beef that they marketed as American grass-fed beef. And had that opportunity not presented itself, it wouldn't have worked. So that was just pure luck, and I'm grateful for it. But we got to acknowledge it. And we operated successfully as a wholesale grass-fed beef producer and had a really good return on investment and did really well. But it changed. And when I tell you, in 2015, USD changed the rule for product of the USA. Prior to 2015, for beef to be labeled product of the USA, the cow had to be born, raised, and slaughtered in the United States, in the 50 states. And in 2015, they changed that rule. My bet is it was Big Meat that promoted that change, but I don't know how that happened. But they changed it so that if value was added in this country, it was a product of the USA. So suddenly, it didn't happen suddenly, but over the next few years, the door opened and beef from Australia, New Zealand, Uruguay, 20-something other countries came into this country as product of the USA. Now, I am not jealous of other countries being able to import product into this country. I think it's fine. I'm a free trade kind of guy. But let's be very honest about where it came from. Let's don't say product of the USA. Let's just say product of wherever, and that the consumers use. But when that happened, for some reason, they're able to produce it cheaper in these other countries, or maybe it's just the ability of big meat to shop it in the cheapest place that day. But my margins fell dramatically, and I didn't know if we were going to be able to stay in business or not. The pandemic hit, and my daughter started the order fulfillment center, direct-to-consumer online marketing, and that brought us back up.
Well, that was in the 2020 pandemic.
Yeah,
really.
She actually had started the online store before that, but it wasn't doing anything. But when and I made a mistake, when the pandemic hit, we sold out of like overnight, in a week. And in retrospect, I should have cut off all my wholesale customers and satisfied all my online customers. And I didn't stay with the wholesale customers out of any kind of loyalty. I just didn't think it was a thing to do. But in retrospect, it would have been the thing to do.
But what a crazy time! I mean, what a crazy time, and what an opportunity, though. You know, like at that point, like that, and that's a similar thing happened in Australia. There were some businesses a lot of businesses went under, but the circumstance for other businesses was like the golden opportunity because people couldn't travel. You know, they had to.
Same here, and
you adapted.
And now we're responding to it. You saw we were building we spent about $2 million building a freezer. You know, because the online business is frozen product, and the grocery is fresh product. And I got a tiny little freezer, so now we're building a big freezer so we can accommodate that. We're making some other changes. I mentioned the size of the plant, and the size the plant wound up being was the right size, but we've outgrown it now. In 2012 or so, I built a USDA inspected poultry plant, and I made a mistake in it. I overbuilt it. You know, I misread the market and how much pasture poultry I could sell. So it has not been a good investment for us. But now we're going to spend $1 million or so converting it, so I can still process poultry, but I can also process hogs and sheep and goats, and that'll take pressure off my red meat plant, so it'll become just a cattle plant. So I think that's going to be a much better operation for us. It is following the evolution of the market.
I mean, the good news is you've actually got two plants. You can adapt the cattle one with some freezing. You know, gets a bit more money, and the poultry you can now adapt to smaller species. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm very pleased that worked out.
That worked.
And I mean, we got to see it work. And that's another $3 million in expense in investment.
But I guess with some numbers and forecasting and I can imagine demand's not going to go backwards. Unless God knows what happens.
I'm pretty sure it's going to work, but don't forget, I'm the guy that sees all the I see all the reasons things going to work.
Yeah, you're paying the bills, and
Well, I'm the optimistic guy in our organization. I'm the one that says, again, I see all the reasons why it'll work. I don't see any of the reasons why it won't work, and I recognize that, and that's the reason when the rest of my staff speak up with obstruction, I listen to them.
I was going to say, does that piss you off, or is that you? I guess I'd imagine you respect it and you go, well, it's the the balance.
Yeah. And also, I'm almost 70 years old, and there are not a lot of things. From time to time, there are things that I don't want to force them to do something they don't want to do and then die. And then they they need anything we do that's a big deal now. They need to have again, I own the company, but they need to have more. They will own the company, and I don't need to start something they don't want to do with the full knowledge that my operating opportunity is 5 years or 10 or 2. We don't know.
20. We answered that one. I had another question. Michael Gooden, who he's not far from me in Australia. He had a question about your bulls, keeping your bulls entire. We did talk about it this morning a bit. Keeping your bulls entire and what that means for management. Without, you don't have to go through all the detail, but what are some of the sort of the pros and the cons of that sort of a management structure?
So for those that don't know, sound like this guy knows, for those that don't know, we for the most part, leave bulls intact. For many years, I left bulls intact. I tell people that we castrated everything born on this farm that wasn't named Harris for years. And about 10 or 12 years ago, Whole Foods Market, at the time, was my biggest customer. I don't sell them anymore, but at the time, they were my biggest customer. Embraced the Global Animal Partnership, which is an animal welfare nonprofit. And they set steps 1 through 5. And step 5 was the highest level, and there was no physical alterations. So you didn't cut horns, you didn't castrate.
What about? Do you do earmarks? Do you just take a nick out of the ear? No.
Not for step 5.
So you could put a tag in there.
You can put a tag in.
Okay.
You put a tag in.
A little puncher.
You can't notch. Which I used to do.
Yeah.
So the belief is there'll be a premium paid for that if you're at step 5. So I decided I would try it, and it worked really well. I was very surprised. I think I probably had 600 or 700 calves that were born on the farm, and I didn't castrate, so it'd been 300 and something bulls. I didn't castrate them, and I had a lot of trepidation, but it went really well. I mean, I had very little problem, a little pushing, but they were raised together. You wouldn't go to the stockyard and buy from different sources and do that. Those calves that were all raised together, there just wasn't much of a problem. And what the bet, and by the way, they didn't pay me my premium, so it was not a good deal.
Why didn't they do that?
I don't know. It wasn't much of a premium, but and I don't do business with them anymore. So, but the good news is, I realized that I was actually raising better bulls than I was buying. Now, you've seen my cows, and they're pedestrian, crossbred cattle. They're not show cattle. But if you have 350 bulls to choose from, there's some good ones. And I was buying bulls from people that had 200 mama cows, so they had less than 100 bulls, and they were keeping the 10 best ones. So I wasn't getting the selection was not there. So one of the best things I've done is to save my own bulls for the last 10 or 12 years. And I really like what it's doing to my herd. Their frame score is coming down. I think the girth is going up. I don't have calving problems anymore. I used to artificially inseminate. And
Really?
I didn't know.
How long ago was that back in conventional land?
Yeah, back in conventional. Yeah, back then.
Yeah.
And I can do it myself. I used to clean up bull, but I ordered semen from bulls that were freaks of nature.
Mm.
They would have a ribeye as big as my hat. and attributes is a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
If you do something real well, there's probably stuff you don't do too good.
Yeah.
Okay. And what this did for me is it allowed me to pick my own bulls that were not freaks of nature, and it also allowed me to have a lot of bulls. I don't know if you'll get into this very deeply or not, but a friend of mine was a Lassiter, and the Lassiters were the originators of the Beefmaster breed.
Beefmaster? Really?
So, yeah. And he's dead now. But he sent me a handwritten copy of a handwritten document. He had something like 120 mama cows and put about 20 bulls in there with them and bred them. When the calves were born, he took, this is very early on, before this became very popular, but he would take hair from the calf, from the tail head, and have DNA testing.
Yeah, right.
And you would think if you had 120 cows and 20 bulls, that'd be about 5 or 10 calves per bull. No. One bull, 70 calves. One bull, 20, and then ones and twos and zeros.
So it was a hierarchy, right? It was a hierarchy of the bulls in that bull.
Well, I think what I think it was is the bull that had the most libido and 4 good legs and 2 good testicles and 1 good penis and felt good was getting the cows bred. Yeah. And I want my herd to come from that bull.
Yeah. A goer, a doer.
And if his ribeye areas are half inch smaller, it's all right. Mm. So I embrace that, and now I save my own bulls, closed herd. I like to think I'm originating my own breed of cattle.
Well, have you got a name for that? Harris.
I think it takes 2 to 3 or 4 or 5 generations, not cow generations. I'm not arrested you anything.
You better think of a name though. So Jenny or Jody's kids can.
I think it's a little early to optimize over that. The gestation period is 283 days. We ain't got to come up with a name right this minute. So
I don't think that'd be a great legacy. What about this?
I think we're not gonna call him Will.
The Will Master.
No, just.
I'm going to think of it for you.
Okay.
You
work on
Have you got a suggestion box somewhere? So that's good. Michael, would you be satisfied with it? I wanted a quick one about the what about the quality of the meat? So that's obviously the batteries are left in. There is the natural hormonal cycles and flow and whatever else. Chemistry is natural. Well, how does that impact on quality and management?
That's good. That's a good question. And the first thing you got
is that my first good question?
No, it's a good question. So it's yet another good question.
It's my second one.
Yeah, it's yet another good question. So, I don't know how this is Australia. In this country, it's prime, choice, standard.
The grading.
And then it's all based on how fat the animal is. Mm. And the fact is, the fact is, when you leave these bulls intact, you're not going to, especially on grass, you don't get any prime. Yeah. If you castrate them on grass, you ain't get no prime.
They just don't get fat.
They just don't get that. They don't get that fat. Yeah. So I think that if you're selling below prime and choice, it's not that much difference. There is some difference. And by the way, we sell it as bull meat. I think there are, and there's a limit to how much you can sell. I think there is a market for that bull meat, and I don't know, maybe it's the guys that are on
bodybuilders, protein,
something like that. Yeah. But we and Jenny, Jenny manages inventory very, very carefully, and she wants to be sure we don't raise too much of it. I'm going to sell some steers this year because we are over capacity on the pasture, so we castrated a percentage of the bull.
You did too, yeah. Well, maybe that's another suggestion I can put in the suggestion box, is like a new brand. Mm. It's a bodybuilder's brand.
Yeah. I'm probably not going to read those suggestions. Be sure Jenny or somebody. Don't put it in here.
Okay. Well, I won't waste my time giving it to you.
No, that's my point.
Okay, we better wrap it up pretty soon because one that I've got two more. You are making a few waves of news, and I noticed your little award over there is back to front Solar Rancher of the Year 2024. You've done some pretty interesting things with sheep.
Yeah, we just got that this week. So we because land is precious, and we several things happened. One is we got the appetite for more land than we can afford to buy. That's one thing. The second thing is a solar operator, solar voltaic company, bought 1,450 acres of land about 6 miles from here from a friend of mine. His family's farm sold, sadly. And it sold to be made into a solar array. And I had seen so many solar arrays go in and just rape the land. I mean, just bulldoze the hills, raw dirt, not soil, raw dirt under it, and dependence on mowing with lawnmowers and spraying with chemicals. And I really hated to see that land done that way. And it's a long story, but I used some political capital and got the CEO to come down, and I was very lucky. Again, Reagan Farr is his name, and he is the CEO of Silicon Ranch. That's the solar operator. And Reagan is a attorney, a CEO, an MBA, all those letters, and a brilliant guy, and very non-agricultural. But his dad was the poultry director for Louisiana State University. And while he is a Ivy League businessman, he was raised showing chickens. And so he had a level of understanding. And we showed him the benefit ecologically of grazing, not mowing and spraying. And he embraced it. And we'll be at about 2,000 acres of solar arrays, hopefully this year, and with sheep. I can't put cattle or goats under them. They're too frail. The panels are not rigid enough, but sheep work well.
Yeah, right. And so, because the cattle they're too high, and the goats would want to sort of clamber and jump around, I guess.
Now, I'm going to say this: I'm going to put solar voltaic for my plant, and I'm going to spend about $2.5 million on that. I got some funding from the federal government, and we'll find some more. But it's going to be what's called a cattle tracker, which will be high enough for cattle to graze under, and I think that's going to be a real game changer.
Dual purpose. My question around that was, do you know, has anyone done any research on the potential impact of like EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies and so on, like there's a lot of current going through that system on animal behavior, reproduction, health? Is there any Has there been any work done on that?
I don't know.
Don't know.
We've got about 2,000 head.
That's a lot of sheep.
Under the solar array, and I think we're going to go to about 3,000 head. Of course, the land is degraded with the construction process. So about a sheep per acre is about all it can stand. But as the land improves, we can get the numbers up. But the point is, we've got a good many sheep out there, and I see. I'm not a scientist, and I don't have a control group, but I see no adverse effects. There may be some. I'm not here to tell you, oh, it's fine, just fine. I'm not saying that.
Yep.
But if they're going to build solar voltaic arrays, this is a heck of a lot better ecologically than the other thing.
Well, in some ways, it offsets certainly the impact and may regenerate that disturbance of all that construction and the whole thing.
They absolutely do. And keep in mind, you're in the coastal plains of Georgia, and this was a forest.
Yeah.
And a field with solar panels emulates that forest.
Shade.
Yeah. A whole lot better than a bulldozed level field of soybeans or peanuts or corn or cotton.
Totally. I mean, there's economics behind it as well. Final question, Will. Angelica and I were talking about, as I mentioned before, my favourite thing is our job as parents is to prepare our children to leave us. Do you have any parental advice that you, as a father, as a parent, you can impart? Has there been any tips and tricks or any sort of mantras that you know?
I'll ask my wife and get back to you.
That's a cop-out. Yeah, no, there must be something. You didn't interact with your daughters a bit.
Well, my wife and I have been married to the same woman for 40-something years, 50, close to 50. Don't tell her I don't know how many, but it's a long time.
I'm not going to edit that out.
Yeah,
she listens to this.
She's not going to watch this.
I might just
send her.
Long. I might send her this minute.
Yeah, I might go to Australia.
You're welcome.
Well, I was going to say,
parental advice.
Yeah. We have an old-fashioned relationship in that I ran the farm and she ran the house and the family. And she did a really good job. She raised 3 wonderful children. I slept in the house, but I was gone before they got up, and I got home after they went to bed. But 2 of the 3 daughters decided to come back and join the farm, which was a very pleasant surprise for me. But no, I'm just not the best person to give you child raising advice. I'm the best person to give you cow raising advice.
Is there any parallels?
Probably.
Apart from the castration bit.
Probably is right. I didn't castrate any of my children. They were girls. They were girls.
Lucky for them.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll defer. We'll defer to your lovely wife. We're going to wrap it up. That's been a while. What I'm going to do is take a section out of that, and I made some little notes there. We're going to put that into a separate little thing for about 20, 30 minutes. It'll go to a subscription, our subscribers, and they'll get that separate to the rest of it. And if you're happy to, we'll definitely need a break now. We might turn that air conditioner back on for a minute. I just want to do 10 minutes of a quick Q&A, some standard little questions, but let's have a break. And can I just say what an absolute honour and joy it's been, and I'm surprised because I didn't know you well enough up to the point of being here yesterday, but now your generosity in your time, your wisdom, it's clear this community is a result of your generosity in so many different levels. We had such an interesting drive around today. Our chats last night, our chats at lunch. I can't thank you enough for the time you've put aside to speak with me and my family and to capture this gold. So I just can't. I don't know how. Oh, you know what? I was going to bring. I've got them in the house down there. You know, have you had a Tim Tam biscuits? They're a chocolate biscuit. Oh, you're in for a treat.
Good.
So my grandfather invented this biscuit called the Tim Tam. It's a chocolate biscuit. And in 1954 and 1956 in the Kentucky Derby, there was a
1954.
Was it 54 Kentucky Derby or 56?
Uh-huh.
There was a horse running called Tim Tam, and my grandfather was in the States at the time and didn't go. I don't think he went to the horse race, but he saw the form guide. And he went, "Wow, that's a great name!"
Yeah.
And he was making this biscuit, and he patented the name or whatever he did, trademarked it. Anyway, that's become Australia's most famous biscuit.
How about that?
And I brought a packet from Australia for
Well,
you.
thank you, sir.
And I also brought a bandana. One of these. I've got about 6 colours. I'm going to give you. You can choose which colour.
Wow.
There's a pink one there. There's green. There's blue. There's all sorts.
I bet I don't need that pink one.
You look good with the pink one.
Really?
I reckon any colour.
I probably look good with any colour.
You are. You'd be good with any of it. So that's my little bit of generosity to you. Oh, you got one there.
Yeah.
Is that your hanky, or do you dab it down?
Yeah, it's more like that. Yeah.
Wipe it down. I notice you haven't. It's getting warm in here, and you haven't used it. We used it. You just sneaky one, understand? Sneaky little dab.
Yeah.
I swear it's getting warm in here. Let's leave it there, Will. If we can do another quick 10 minutes after you've had a little rest or a little stretch, and then you are officially released from your duties, and I again so appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for coming.
Will, legend, thanks so much.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love your support by subscribing, rating and reviewing The Regenerative Journey on your favourite podcast platform. You help us reach more people and keep the show thriving for seasons to come. Each time you listen, you're choosing to make a positive shift in your own world. And if an episode speaks to you, please pass it on to friends, family or communities who might be inspired too. For more details and episodes, visit www.charliearnott.com.au.